Chair.
I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Hey, there was just something that the Minister said when she answered a couple of queries, which I'm not too sure about. What the Minister actually mentioned is that under this Act, there are three clauses, Mr. Chair, that deal with the Albert Park and the City Council, the Albert Park and the Auckland Art Gallery issue. What the Minister said was this does not retrospectively grant the gallery or the Auckland City Council any rights that it didn't have. And the thing, and I'm a little unsure about this, and it's a shame the Minister's gone, and I may be a little bit confused. I'm only a simple boy from the regions, of course.
To the absence of a member.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just referring to, I apologise.
No.
Okay, what it says here is that, this is Clause 7, Part 2A, the land over which the extension, and what the extension is, Mr. Chair, is the extension of the Auckland City Council wishes to extend the Auckland Art Gallery, which is sited on freehold land. They wanted to extend it into Albert Park. And the clause says the land over which the extension is sought is a part of a reserve known as Albert Park. And I'm not too sure how the Minister could say that this isn't retrospective, because this legislation does actually empower the Auckland City Council to erect the Auckland Art Gallery on part of Albert Park. So to me that is a little retrospective. Because the reason I say that is it said here the Auckland Improvement Trust Act prohibits the alienation of the whole or any part of the park, hence the reason why we're doing this. And I'd like to just mention some of the things a couple of other speakers mentioned before. I mean, Mr. Prosser mentioned that New Zealand First can't support this bill because it has to go back to the Select Committee. It's been around for 8 years and it needs to be updated. And I see merit in that argument. The argument for that is something I mentioned earlier. This has been around a long time. We're about due for another reserve, another lands disposal bill. As mentioned, I think it might be 7 years. The argument against that, of course, is let's just get this thing passed. Let's get it out there, and then let's start the process of another bill, which is going to be before the committee before too long. And the reason it will be before the committee too long is, as mentioned, these things come up about once every 7 years. Though, when the national speaker stood up and said, let's just get this through, there's something that's been on the books for, I think, 150 years or there since 1903, and we're just correcting a mistake that was made 112 years ago. Of course, he almost contradicted himself when he said that, Mr. Chair, because what I would say to that is, well, if they've been waiting for 112 years, what's another 12 months? It's obviously not vitally important, because if it was, then successive generations of mayors would have forced this through a lot sooner than 2015. I suspect in 1903 they didn't expect that in 2015 it would still be on the statute, let alone being debated in Parliament. I don't know who the MP for that area was back then. There are a couple of other things I'd just like to dig into a little bit deeper, Mr. Chair, to see if I can gain a little bit of clarity on this. In Clause 10, this is the Auckland Volcanic Cones land. The background to this is if anyone wants to undertake any sort of earthworks in land that abuts one of the volcanic cones or affects the nature of one of the volcanic cones, what they had to do is they had to actually seek the permission from the Governor-General. They had to seek the express authorisation from the Governor-General, or the Governor in Council, which is now the Governor-General by order in Council. But what this does, Mr. Chair, is it says that now this has to go to the Minister of Conservation, and this is on recommendation of the Department of Conservation. And because what it says is it's no longer appropriate for the Governor-General to make this sort of almost micro decision, and I get that. That sort of makes sense. But my question, I suppose, is why would it go to the Minister of Conservation? Why wouldn't they just say, hey, instead of the Governor-General having to make this decision, let's put it in the hands of the Auckland City Council, because the Auckland City Council, for all intents and purposes, and my understanding, is responsible for the management of the Resource Management Act, which, as we all know, covers sort of any sort of activity that alters the shape of land. It used to be the Regional Council, now it's the Auckland City Council. So again, this just creates another anomaly in the governance of Auckland or in any area associated with any sort of earthworks in Auckland. Ordinarily, if you abutted a volcanic cone and you want to put a garage up or tennis court, whatever, you would just assume that you've got to go to the Auckland City Council to get a resource consent. And you might have to, I'm not sure. But what this says is you actually have to then approach the Minister of Conservation. And I just think that, Mr Chair?
I call, let's hear from Mika Whaitiri.